Humans are social creatures, so it's inevitable that conflict will arise. When you get into an argument or conflict with a peer or a friend, what determines if you're going to reconcile? What makes it worth the effort to resolve this conflict? What is it about this particular person? Daniela C., Vassar class of 2018, says, "Because they mean a lot to me, and if we've been through a lot together, it's worth it."
Udbov A says, "Because I care about them." After being asked what makes it worth to reconcile, he says, "It's a combination of things. Depends on time spent together, how that person approaches people around them. It's hard to describe why I feel connected to someone."
So as you can see, while people definitely agree that it's important to reconcile with a friend, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly why that is beyond, well, because they're my friend and I care about them. Today, we want to explore this idea of reconciliation between non-kin further. What is it that drives the need to reconcile? We propose that relationships are strategic investments and that individuals are more likely to reconcile with another individual if that individual's value to them is high. This value comes from resources like access to food, social status, mates, protection, and stress reduction.
But first, what exactly is reconciliation? Reconciliation is a friendly post-conflict reunion between former opponents that functions as conflict resolution. In order for reconciliation to occur, there are a few cognitive requirements. Individual recognition, good memory of past social events, and learned behavioral contingencies are all necessary for reconciliation to be possible, and we see these characteristics in humans. In humans, reconciliation can be characterized by words of apology, admit a fault, and embrace. We'll turn to our closest living relatives, primates, to examine reconciliation and the benefits that unrelated individuals offer each other. But not all primates reconcile. Today, we're specifically looking at studies on chimpanzees, macaques, and baboons, because the literature shows that these primates display post-conflict behaviors towards both kin and non-kin, such as grooming, embrace, and soft vocalizations. Researchers have operationalized these behaviors as characteristics of reconciliation.
Relationships can be broken down into two categories, kin and non-kin. The kin selection theory predicts that when individuals support kin, they enhance their own fitness indirectly because they share genes with the recipient. But today, we want to focus on non-kin because these relationships are inherently curious. Why would someone invest in a relationship with someone they're not related to? From an evolutionary perspective, why would you support and waste resources on somebody who is not carrying your genes? Remember, in the testimonies in the beginning of the video, students were talking about the importance of reconciling with friends and peers who were non-kin. So we hypothesize that unrelated individuals provide us with valuable resources, and therefore we are motivated to reconcile in order to maintain access to these resources.
Scientists have attempted to explain beneficial relationships between non-kin with the term reciprocal altruism. In reciprocal altruism, the altruistic act incurs costs and no immediate benefits, but only on the basis that benefits will be received in the future. Non-kin relationships take several different forms, including mates, allies, grooming partners, and tolerant partners near food. Fitness benefits of these relationships include access to food, social status, mating opportunity, protection, and stress relief. Today, we want to make the connection that the resources shared between non-kin are the main reason that an individual will be motivated to expend the energy it takes to reconcile after a conflict with another individual who is unrelated to them.
According to the valuable relationship hypothesis, the more valuable a relationship is, the more likely reconciliation is going to occur after a conflict. The value of a social relationship depends on the extent to which it provides inclusive fitness benefits to partners or minimizes their losses during competition. Value can build up for one or both partners for various reasons, but it occurs in the context of competition for resources like food, mates, safety, and group membership. Let's take a look at a study which explores the valuable relationship hypothesis. Patzelt, Pirot, and Fisher investigated the valuable relationship hypothesis in a captive population of Barbary macaques. Their goal was to study how kinship, affiliation, rank, support, and sex affect the frequency of reconciliation among Barbary macaques. They took focal observations of the females and observed their conflict, affiliative, and reconciliatory behavior. Before we talk about the results of the Patzelt study, here are a few key definitions. Conflicts were defined as exchanges of aggressive interactions between two macaques. Aggressive interactions were defined as threats such as open-mouth threat faces, lunges, chasing behavior, or biting. Affiliative interactions were operationalized as grooming, body contact, and feeding within 1 meter of each other, as well as embracing and support in agonistic encounters. Reconciliation was coded as an affiliative interaction that took place within 10 minutes of the conflict. Patzelt and his fellow researchers found that the likelihood of engaging in post-conflict reconciliation was primarily determined by affiliation and support, while kinship or rank relationships did not significantly affect the likelihood of reconciliation. Now, what does that mean? It means that macaques who supported each other in conflicts and affiliated with each other by grooming and sitting in close proximity were more likely to reconcile after conflicts. An important aspect of their findings is that kinship did not significantly affect their likelihood of reconciliation. This shows that non-kin can reconcile at comparable rates to kin, and therefore, if the valuable relationship hypothesis holds, there should be benefits associated with non-kin relationships. In conclusion, the Patzelt study suggests, according to the valuable relationship hypothesis, that kin relationships are not the only valuable relationships out there, and that benefits can be derived from non-kin relationships.
So now that we have a better idea of what the valuable relationship hypothesis theorizes, in order to support it, we need to know, well, what exactly are the benefits that unrelated individuals offer that make these relationships so valuable in the first place? We have identified food, status, protection, mating opportunities, and ways to deal with stress as the main benefits non-kin offer each other. Here's what the research says. Let's start with food. Food is a valuable resource that is shared between non-kin and some primate species. In the Thai forest, researchers Wittig and Bosch assigned wild adult chimpanzee pairs a relationship benefit index, RBI, according to the frequency with which they shared food, usually meat, and formed coalitions. Pairs with a high RBI also had high rates of grooming and were more likely than other pairs to exhibit reconciliatory behavior after aggression. This showed that sharing food behavior is a good indicator of closeness of bond via the affiliated behavior of grooming, but also may help predict reconciliatory behavior. This fits with the valuable relationship hypothesis, because if two unrelated individuals get into a conflict, one of the resources they may lose out on is the potential for delicious food sharing like fruits and meat, and reconciling is a way to get access to that food sharing back. Now let's move on to the next resource, rank. For many primates, rank is an integral part of their social structure. In macaques, when a fight breaks out between two individuals, it is not uncommon for a third party to get involved. On a study on male Barbary macaques, Wittig found that males gave support to males whom they received support in return. In two rank patterns where their supporter, A, was higher ranking than both opponents, this was observed more often than expected among non-kin. Patterns where the target of the aggression was the highest ranking male of the three was observed less often than expected among non-kin. This tells us that non-kin interventions stabilize the existing rank of the supporter. Wittig hypothesizes that in the case of Barbary macaques, support of unrelated individuals appears to be selfish cooperation rather than altruistic reciprocal altruism. This is because the intervener's interests depend on the rank relations among the participants in the coalition. Male Barbary macaques appear to intervene more often to stabilize their rank via non-kin support. So even though Barbary macaques form coalitions and intervene on the behalf of others in order to maintain their own ranking within a hierarchy, we'd like to argue that being able to maintain one's rank rather than decrease it is still very valuable. Therefore, the maintenance of rank and access to coalitions is a valuable resource that individuals potentially give up if they do not reconcile conflicts.
The next resource we want to talk about is access to mates. Mates are an extremely important resource because obtaining mates is how primates will pass on their genes to the next generation. Unrelated males will often form coalitions with each other in order to gain access to mates. Coalitions are defined as joint aggression of two or more males against a common target. Berg et al. And his colleagues investigated the formation of coalitions between unrelated male Barbary macaques and found that coalitions often targeted immigrant males. Berg et al. And his colleagues hypothesized that in Barbary macaques, coalitions function as a way to isolate immigrant males from the groups so that the native males can monopolize the mating opportunities. If this is the case, coalition formation between unrelated males is essential for gaining access to mates. Without these coalitions, their mating opportunities would be limited. These coalitions between unrelated males demonstrate the importance of non-kin relationships in gaining access to resources. The next resource we want to talk about is infanticide protection. In primate societies that have male dispersal, infanticide is a common male reproductive strategy. Once immigrant males enter a new group, they often kill existing infants. Immigrant males kill existing infants in order to send the mothers of the infants back into the estrus cycle. Once the mothers have entered back into the estrus cycle, they will be receptive to mating, and the immigrant males can mate with them, thereby causing the mothers to bear the infants of the immigrant males. Palomban and his colleagues investigated infanticide in savanna baboons and found that almost all mothers of young infants formed strong bonds with one or two males. Palomban and their colleagues hypothesized that one reason lactating females form close bonds with adult males is to protect their infant from infanticide. They tested this hypothesis by observing how the male friends of lactating females responded to playbacks of the screams of the females. Male friends responded more strongly than control males to the screams of their female friend, indicating that they recognized their female friend. Following an infant's death, however, male friends responded less strongly than control males to their female friend's screams, which indicates that after the infant has died, the association between the male and their female friend has been terminated. Male friends also responded more strongly than control males to playback sequences in which female screams were combined with the threat vocalization of a potentially infanticidal alpha male, but not when female screams were combined with the threat calls of a non-infanticidal male or an alpha female. The fact that male friends stopped reacting strongly to the screams of their female friends after the death of the female's infant, and that the males responded strongly to their female friend's scream combined with that of an infanticidal male, indicates that the benefits the lactating female derives from their male friend is that the male friend helps protect their infant from infanticide. However, the protection from infanticide that the male friend offers isn't entirely selfless. The male friend whom the lactating female forms a relationship with has almost always copulated with the female during the estrus cycle in which the female conceived their infant. Therefore, it is possible that the infant is the offspring of the male friend, and as a result, the male is motivated to form this non-kin relationship with the mother by kin selection to protect their offspring from infanticide. The Palomban study shows that protection from infanticide is an example of a valuable resource that can be exchanged between non-kin.
So now that we have gone in depth on the benefits of relationships between non-kin, we argue that it is these benefits that make relationships valuable and worth the effort of reconciliation. How does the valuable relationship hypothesis present itself in humans? In humans, the valuable relationship hypothesis was demonstrated in a paper by Otsubo and Yagi that asked participants to imagine they had committed an interpersonal transgression against one of their actual friends, and to rate this friend's instrumentality in achieving their own goals. In order to rate their instrumentality, they were asked how useful or hindering the target was for them in achieving their goals in 6 different domains: academic achievement, club activities, job searching, social relations, and several other goals. They were asked to rate these on a 7-point scale, ranging from -3, very hindering, to +3, very facilitating. Then the participants were asked to rate their willingness to undergo an inconvenient cost in order to apologize to the victim and reconcile. These costs were operationalized as canceling plans such as going to a concert to see their favorite musician, and having dinner with a family member who lives in a distant place, and offering compensation. The primary independent variable the researchers were interested in was instrumentality, that is, how instrumental a friend is to the participant of the study in reaching a goal. When the partner was instrumental to achieving the participant's goals, willingness to make a costly apology increased. The effect of how instrumentality on apology cost was significant. So, this study supports the valuable relationship hypothesis because participants were more willing to reconcile with their valuable partners. Willingness to reconcile was correlated with the partner's usefulness to them in achieving goals, which is very much in line with our initial hypothesis of relationships as strategic investments that make them worth reconciling. So now that we know the basic idea behind the valuable relationship hypothesis, that humans and animals reconcile in order to maintain relationships in which they have access to resources like food, mates, alliances, and stress relief, that these resources are shared between non-kin, which is the reason why a human or non-human animal would expend the energy needed to reconcile with an individual they're not related to. It's important to know more about the biological mechanisms driving us to reconcile.
Early on in this video, we mentioned different cognitive abilities required for reconciliation to occur. In addition, there are many emotions and behaviors that play out in conflict resolution. Breaking down what neuroscience and physiology research has revealed about all of these different aspects of conflict resolution, we can paint a coherent picture that explains the biological drive for reconciliation. So let's start from conflict. Say you're in a fight with your friend. While the fight is happening, one brain structure called the amygdala has high levels of neuronal activation. The amygdala is well known as the emotion center, but it's mostly implicated in emotions such as fear and aggression. You can say the more protective emotions. This makes sense. In a fight with your friend, the reason why you engage in the conflict is that at that very moment, you're probably protecting something that you care about, so you forget the risk of losing the friendship, and you'd rather argue for something valuable to you, whether that's a physical object you have or an intangible object like a decision or a belief. In the process of a conflict, another brain region called the prefrontal cortex is releasing a lot less serotonin than usual. You might have heard of serotonin before. It has implications in mood, sleep, and appetite. But in the context of the prefrontal cortex, the neurotransmitter serotonin is needed for you to modulate and inhibit certain behaviors that are usually socially unacceptable. For example, if you were to yell in a library, you would probably get shut down by those around you really quickly. But suppose your friend tells you that they support a really nasty president that infringes on your right to live. Who cares if you're in a library? You might yell at your friend for a second before realizing that you're in a library and need to be quiet. That's the lack of serotonin allowing you to let that behavior out. Okay, going back to the conflict. Let's say you've been fighting and your friend can't handle it anymore and they decide to leave. You might still be fuming for a bit, but then you start to get anxious and stressed. You realize that it wasn't worth the fight and that you still care for your friend. Although, reminder, this care you feel for your friend is probably just an emotional outcome of the need to keep your valuable relationship. If you lose this friend, you might be losing someone who knows you very well and would know when you need something in the future. This friend also may have many connections to a lot of other friends, so you could potentially lose even more resources. And the friend is good at chemistry and can help you on your MCAT for med school. So losing this friend means losing a lot. So how does the anxiety and push to reconcile with your friend occur from a biological standpoint? Well, let's investigate the brain a bit more. Your amygdala and prefrontal cortex have afferent connections to your hypothalamus, more specifically your paraventricular nucleus of your hypothalamus, or PVN. Once the aggression with your friend is over, your serotonin levels will come back to normal, and your body realizes, thanks to your memory of all the past interactions you've had with your friend in another brain region called the hippocampus, that you don't want to lose such a valuable relationship. Specific parts of your amygdala and prefrontal cortex will then start to activate and send signals to the PVN. Then, at the PVN, the body starts to produce a stress response via the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. To save you the stress, all you really need to know is that this axis allows for a signaling cascade from the hypothalamus to the pituitary and then to the adrenal gland, which then releases glucocorticoids, the ultimate stress hormone. Now, glucocorticoid release can usually take care of itself, as in, after a certain period of time, the stress can go away because the glucocorticoids can travel to the pituitary and PVN and inhibit their activity. But if you haven't made up with your friend yet, you'll continue to be anxious, your amygdala and prefrontal cortex will continue to go wild and stimulate the PVN, so your body will continuously make glucocorticoids. Now, this is bad. We know that chronic stress can lead to many different harmful health outcomes, such as heart disease and depression. But what can you do? You're stuck in a stressful situation that is losing this valuable relationship. Think of it like a fight or flight response. If you're up against a dragon, you have two options: to fight and slay the dragon, or to run away until you find a safe place. But either way, you finally obtain safety, and your brain will stop stimulating the PVN, and glucocorticoids can regulate itself for decreased production. But in the case of a conflict with a friend, you are still in danger of losing a relationship. You're not safe yet. So the prefrontal cortex and amygdala continue to fire. The anxiety from losing a valuable resource will cause the continual production of glucocorticoids. So how the heck does the body know to motivate you to go make up with your friend? Turns out, increased glucocorticoid levels prompts the release of the ultimate social chemical, oxytocin, from the PVN. Oxytocin is known to increase motivation for social bonding and physical contact. So in the context of conflict resolution, your body is telling you to combat the stress you feel from the potential loss of a valuable relationship to go find that friend and restore the social bond. Once you've gone to reconcile with your friend, most likely using behaviors of social bonding and physical contact, such as a hug, oxytocin has done its job and eliminated the cause of fear and anxiety. Essentially, you're now in the equivalent of a safe place. The amygdala and prefrontal cortex can stop sending signals to the PVN to stop the activation of the HPA axis. The remaining glucocorticoids will inhibit the HPA further to make sure no more glucocorticoids are released. And evidence shows that oxytocin works in tandem to inhibit further glucocorticoid release as well. making oxytocin an especially awesome hormone. Another important note is that the relationship with glucocorticoids and oxytocin is bidirectional. Not only does increase in glucocorticoids lead to the release of oxytocin, oxytocin can be released in response to social bonding behaviors, which then mediates glucocorticoid levels. The neurobiology behind the reconciliation process reveals one more resource that non-kin relationships can provide: a way to deal with stress.
So how do we tie these primate and human studies on reconciliation together? The studies on primates help us to understand how potential mechanisms for human reconciliation have evolved. That these relationships are valuable because they offer access to food, rank, mates, protection, and stress relief. That this value is what predicts whether two individuals will reconcile or not. So when you get into an argument with a friend and you are deciding whether to reconcile or not, that person's instrumentality in reaching your own goals and the resources they can offer you play a part in your decision to go through the effort of reconciling. You may think you're making up with your friend because they mean a lot to you, that you've been through so much together and that they know you best. But perhaps a more realistic interpretation of this is that your friend offers you valuable resources that you're in jeopardy of losing if you don't reconcile.